book is the book of a man who was most definitely neither coward nor meek. And here, in this book, he dares to speak. It's above all an act of courage by a man who's determined that the boat does indeed need rocking. And not just any boat, but the great ship of state, with its defensive apparatus and its compliant crew ready and willing to spring to its defence. Rob is an ex-naval man, a former commander in the British Navy, a patriot in the truest sense of the word, who loves his country of birth and the values of truth and decency, which any civilised society ought properly to espouse, if it's truly to be called civilised. He has, and here's another naval metaphor, they're piling up, fired a shot across its bows. The naval metaphors seem entirely apposite to me in this context. When I was reading this book, his stance reminded me of the arrival of the Truxtun in our waters many years ago. Many of you will remember this. Many here will recall that massive vessel entering our waters with its possible risk to our nation, and how a fleet of little boats raced out from shore to obstruct it. The little fizz boats and yachts and inflatable dinghies and kayaks, and they looked so small out there in the water beside the bulk of that great ship. And they were ridiculed by a commentator who was on board the Truxtun, as I recall. But like many of you here, I felt nothing but exhilaration witnessing the confrontation, the lone figure standing on the frail little craft before massive power is a potent and a deathless image. It's the stuff of poetry and drama and the great image that's fueled our collective imagination for centuries. The mothers and the grandmothers of the Plaza de Mayo, for example, the old woman who flung her stool at the priest in an Edinburgh kirk, the poet's father, Baxter's father, tied to a post in no man's land. These are the people who inspire us and give us hope as human beings, long after the military torturer, the priest, and the sergeant major have vanished into obscurity. I feel exhilaration reading this book. It's not an easy read. It's crammed with detail of a kind that felt very familiar in a funny way as I was reading it, but it's from my reading of crime fiction, not fact. There was the record of exact times of arrivals and departures, the cast of strange men glimpsed over a period of days, where they were seen and where, and what they were wearing, and the cars glimpsed on this road or again on that road, the accounts of witnesses, sometimes contradictory, sometimes corroborative. I found myself struggling, as I do when reading fiction, to keep it all in order, to try and make sense of it. And then I turned a page, and in the midst of this detail that I knew from fiction, I have to admit I was reading it as a kind of whodunit, really. And there were some photographs, 2 grainy black and white images, police photos, of an elderly woman lying under some trees, with her bare white legs splayed, one of them still clad in a sock, and her face in the grass. And all that fell away. This isn't fiction. It's not the prose stuff of primetime television with its nightly diet of murdered women. This is a person, the woman on the cover of this book, with her beautiful, intelligent, direct gaze and her sweet expression. This is Hilda Murrell, a horticulturalist, a rose grower, an expert in her field of such repute that David Austin named a rose for her. A clever woman, the first in her family to attend Cambridge, where she graduated in English and French. A good friend to many, and Rob Green's beloved aunt, someone who shared with her nephew a deep love of her country, not the feeble sports ground PR-generated patriotism with its flag waving and incitements to be loyal, but a clear vision of what is good and beautiful in a country and worthy of defence. This woman, the woman on the cover of this book, was simply determined that her country should never be put at risk of being destroyed, as vast areas of Russia have been destroyed by nuclear disaster. She'd educated herself. She'd read about the consequences of nuclear technology, of the deformed babies, the painful cancerous deaths, the same hideous future that's being visited right now as we gather here, silently and invisibly on the people around Fukushima. And as we ourselves could so very easily be standing. As recently as July 2010, a nuclear industry publication was proposing nuclear power stations for New Zealand, located, and I like this, on the coast, near the main load centres, and quoting a poll of New Zealand's visionary business leaders, 70% of whom were in favour of investigating the nuclear option. It would be sustainable, it would enhance our clean green image, etc., etc., etc. That's where we could be, right now, in Canterbury, and we have good cause to be grateful to those people in their little boats. Internationally, we have good cause too for gratitude to people like Hilda Murrell, who dared to speak, and to people like her nephew Rob Green, who's refused to accept the official version of her death. With Kate Dew's painstaking assistance, at one point in the book, one of my favourite lines was that Rob referred to her as his Rottweiler. He's been able to outline the absurdity of the official version of events, in which a slightly built 16-year-old lad who couldn't drive a car, overpowered, raped and killed a woman taller than himself, drove her in her car about the countryside in a reckless fashion noted by several witnesses, then carried her near lifeless body several hundred metres unaided across a muddy field and left her beneath those trees. A crime for which he's been convicted and is currently serving a 15-year sentence. This book is written to present an alternative case, with all the minute detail that requires. But driving it all is a profound sense of love for the best that a country can be when it's not hijacked on the high seas by the tawdry pirates of political expediency and business profit, and above all with love for a woman who was kind to the young man who was her nephew, who listened to him and talked to him, chatting in the kitchen at her little house in Wales, writing him letters as he was growing into maturity, and who showed him the power of a single voice, who saw a great anguish and a wrong and dared to speak. This is a wonderful book, and I'm so proud to be here this evening. Thank you.